Welcome to the Manifestation Babe podcast. My name is Catherine Zinkina, and I'm a manifestation expert, master mindset coach, and multiple seven-figure entrepreneur. I'm obsessed with helping you achieve everything that you once thought was impossible. If you're looking to massively up-level your life, your finances, your relationships, your productivity and success, then you have come to the right place. My goal in this podcast is to help you see the infinite potential within yourself to be, do, and have anything that your heart desires. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of mindset development to help you maximize who you are and where you're going. Leave it to me to provide you with the tools, the resources, the strategies, and teachings that you need to manifest a reality wilder than your wildest dreams. I know we're about to have so much fun together, so thank you so much for pushing play today. And now let's begin. Hello, my beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of the Manifestation Babe podcast. So today's episode is for all of my astrology lovers, or even my astrology curious. I'm interviewing my friend Natalia Benson and asking her your biggest, hottest, juiciest, gotta know this information right now questions. It was the ultimate Q&A, and you know I love a good Q&A session. So this was extra fun for me. We talk about in this episode things like difficult chart placements and the more logical explanation of astrology to those who maybe are skeptical or like, I don't know if astrology works, or I need to know more of the science behind it. We talk about what it means to be a specific sun sign, rising sign, moon sign. And by we talk about, I mean, she's talking about it because I'm just asking the questions. I have all the questions just like you. There was an interesting question that I was able to ask her, which is, can astrology predict your death? Which I have never heard anyone ever answer that question. So that was just fascinating. She answers, can astrology tell you how much money you're going to have? Why certain signs like Scorpios, for example, get so much flak? And I have a lot of Scorpio energy, so I'm just speaking from experience. What is a chart placement that makes Natalia go, oh no, that sucks? Or what it means to be born during a retrograde, and so much more. I wanted to make sure that this wasn't your average astrology episode. I wanted to go into things that I have never even heard of being discussed before on a podcast, and Natalia does not disappoint. If you don't know who Natalia is, she is a spiritual business strategist, money mentor, and astrologer living in Southern California. Natalia specializes in high-level conscious business coaching, digital course creation, and online monetization rooted in spiritual wellness offerings. She also has her own financial empowerment membership, Heart-Led Business School, and hosts Natalia Benson, the podcast, which just hit over 1 million downloads, which is a big deal. Congratulations. Natalia has been quoted and featured in Women's Health, InStyle, Well and Good, Yahoo Finance, and Hello Giggles. And I just want to add Cosmopolitan because we were both in a specific article that was kind of disappointing to both of us. Cosmopolitan. So I just wanted to add that in there. And Modern Luxury Silicon Valley featured her as a rising star to watch who helps high-powered women channel their inner goddess. Natalia's mission is to see women empowered with the ability to create their own revenue streams, running the businesses that contribute and don't deplete the whole of humanity. She seeks to create more depth, compassion, kindness, empowerment, and joy in the world at large via the practicing of self-accountability and the integration of spiritual tools. Now, without further ado, let's get deep into the world of stars and planets, baby. Oh my God, I have Natalia Benson in the house with me, and we are about to go into the deepest, most amazing astrology Q&A together. Like, the people have questions, and we're going to give the people what they want. Okay.
I am You ever know when you smile so much that these muscles hurt, like right by your nose? Like, I'm already like that. And we've been talking for 5 minutes, Catherine. Like, okay, I'm ready. I cannot wait to answer these questions. I'm here for it.
Oh, amazing. Well, the first question I have is one that has stumped me in the past. And I don't know the difference. Is there a difference between, I see these interchangeably and sometimes I don't, and like
Mhm.
people will sometimes specify, be like, I'm an astrologer, and then someone else says I'm an astrologist. Like, what the fuck is the difference?
Babe, I have to tell you, I have no flipping clue. Like I call myself an astrologer, but
Uh-huh.
even the other day I was teaching a class and one of my girls said that she refers to herself as an astrologist. I have no
Okay.
idea. I think it's honestly preference, but we could do some back end like Google searching and be like, what the heck is the difference? But I personally have no idea, but I love to say astrologer.
Okay.
That's
Well,
my
we're gonna
vibe.
give that as homework for the people listening
Yes.
because I don't feel like Googling anything right now. But
We're not Googling.
if
We're
this is
rapid
something,
firing.
this is clearly like Natalia and I, we don't get worked up on like terminology that just doesn't make a difference in our life. Like who fucking cares, right? So if you really care, I love that for you and you can Google it. Um,
Oh my gosh.
What? Okay, so sometimes we hear about the big three, and
Mhm.
like sometimes people ask me the big five. We're just gonna let's just focus on the big three because I feel like that's more common. What are the big three, and why are these so important and the ones mostly talked about when it comes to like people asking for your sign? I know when I was growing up and initially like got into astrology, people will just ask for sun sign. All I knew was sun sign. I didn't even know there's anything above a sun sign. And now people are like, well, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I'm a Libra sun, Libra rising, Gemini moon. And it's like everyone is in conversation about those big three. Like, what are those? Why are they important?
Okay, so the big three, just to break it down, the sun is essentially considered your consciousness and the lens that you view reality through. So that's your sun sign. And I always say everybody is aware of their sun sign because think of it, everyone is aware of the sun. The sun is the
Yeah.
life-giving force. It's just kind of it's a given, you know? The moon is essentially our emotional personality and it represents our unconscious self.
Mm,
So the moon is the unconscious self. The sun is the conscious self. I know this can come
mm,
up in human design too, where there's like a conscious self and unconscious self.
yeah.
So same in astrology, like the sun is the conscious self. The moon is the unconscious or the emotional self. I'm going real basic, but I'll dive a little deeper into each one. And then the ascendant is essentially, I'm going to give you two sides of the ascendant. So the ascendant is essentially the projected personality, but
Mm,
here's like a little astrological geek out moment because the ascendant is known as an angle, and it's a very, very important angle in the chart. And the idea is very simply that the moment you're born, you are at the center of your chart. It's like, you know, how you have to have your exact birth time.
yeah.
So basically, what the ascendant is it means that that is the sign on the zodiac belt ascending over the eastern horizon. So that's just the technical part. But then the more esoteric part of it is that that angle is discovered through between the 12th house and the first house. The 12th house is your subconscious, your soul, your past lives are in there. Like your 12th house is this more, let's say like this more esoteric, unanimated or under the radar part of you. Let's just call it the soul.
Yeah.
And then the first house is your physical, projected outward self, your ego. So you
Mm,
have this angle between that which represents the soul and the subconscious and the ego and the projected self, or the ego and the physical manifestation of you. So
yeah.
the ascendant is interesting. I have to tell you, I'm obsessed with the ascendant, and I
Me
think
too.
it's really powerful to pay attention to because the ascendant determines your house placements, which is very, very important in the chart. I'm sure maybe we'll talk about that today,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the ascendant is also like, so let's say, Catherine, we all cruised around in life and we all looked at everything from an astrological lens. I mean, I do, but I wish everybody did. It'd be fun. But here's the thing. So if I met you and you shook my hand, I would assume you are a Libra because of your ascendant. But then if I sat down and we started to have a conversation, I would see, oh, I'm seeing her sun sign. She's telling me like ways that she
Mm,
navigates through life, how she looks at things, how she moves through her life experience, sun sign. And then if we got to be really, really close, I would see your Gemini moon. So see
mm.
how it's like these layers almost of ascendant, sun, moon. So
That is
that's a,
so well explained.
isn't it
That's
fascinating?
like
Like
you
I
have the
could,
best explanations. I'm telling you, this is this is the astrology episode you like obviously you have already tuned into some, but like get other people to tune into it too, because whenever I hear Natalia explain I mean anything, you've been a guest expert inside of the Manifestation Babe Collective,
yes,
so we've already had like an element of this Q&A, and I looked at her and I'm like, you have to come on the podcast because the way that you explain it, it's so simplified that you get it in a such
perfect.
a simplified way. I love
Yeah,
it.
that's how it should be because astrology is complicated, just like a lot of things in life. But complexity is the enemy of execution, it's said.
Yeah.
So we have to find a way to anchor these things so they actually make a difference in our life because astrology is life changing. Okay, I
Yeah.
promised you I was going to keep my answers concise so we can just rock because I have all the Gemini. I've got a Sag moon. Like, I can go in.
You're a Sag moon.
Yes, I have a
My son
Sagittarius
is too.
moon.
It's funny because I went into labor. I was in labor for 43 hours. So let's say like two freaking whole days of labor. Oh
Oh,
my God. And I knew it was guaranteed basically because it would be even if he was born like let's say at this time, even if he was 2 weeks late, which my midwife would not let me, like according to California guidelines, like you can't be
no
2 weeks
way.
more than 2 weeks late. You would have to be induced even under the care of a midwife. And so I knew it was guaranteed he'd be a Leo sun. But then the fun part is like, okay, what is the moon sign? What is the ascendant? And I
Catherine,
remember
I
my
love
mom and I,
you. Were you like keeping an eye on the lunar transits?
of course I was. And when I went into labor, this is the funny part. Sag moon, because the moon signs are they're how long are they? Like a day and a half or 2 days?
Exactly. Yes.
Day and a half?
Day and a half to 2 days. It
Okay.
depends. But yeah, it's about that.
So when I went into labor, it was Scorpio moon. And I did not feel like he was a Scorpio moon. And I was very perplexed and confused. And so was my mom. It's just like nothing wrong with Scorpio moon. It's just like we didn't feel that that was him
Yeah.
and true
Yeah.
to him. And I remember I did not like, I knew first labors would be long and like, yeah, 24 hours, 28 hours. Did I fucking know it's 43 hours? No. So in
Oh
my
my
mind, I'm like,
God.
this is strange. This is interesting, but whatever. We're going to let it play out. And then I was like, all right, so now I know he's going to be a Scorpio moon based off of like, this is what I'm thinking about in labor, you guys. Like, this is how, this is, of course, before it gets to the point where you can't think of anything. So
Yeah, I
obviously,
was gonna say, babe, I'm like the fact that you were even able to like check the charts, I'm like, tell us more. Like
yeah, yeah. No,
I'm
this is
shocked.
no, keep listening. So I was like, all right, the fun part will be ascendant. And then 43 hours later, I knew this is the weird part. I knew at what time the Scorpio moon would go into a Sag moon. And I'm like, this is so strange. I still feel like he's a Sag moon. Maybe this is false labor. But it was progressing and progressing and progressing and progressing. So I was like, okay, never mind. Like he's going to be, this is still literally what I'm thinking about, like with crazy contractions. In between, I'm like thinking about his human design and astrology. And anyway, he's born. And the first thing I do, we do skin to skin. And I'm, of course, in this like fullest out state. And the first thing I do as soon as it's Brennan's turn to hold him, I, of course, take that in and he's like crying and I film it and all this stuff. And then after a certain point, I'm like, all right, he's with the baby. Where's my phone? I haven't checked it in 2.5 days or 2 days or whatever. Where's my phone? I start typing in and I typed in, it's so funny because I got the human design first and he was he? Yeah, he came up as a generator at first. I didn't
And you're a
realize
generator.
I'm a generator, so is my
Yeah.
husband. Like everyone in our life except for my mom is a generator. And I didn't realize that I put in the time wrong. I flipped AM
No
and PM
way.
because someone else texted me because I texted someone like he's here, like here's someone else into human design and astrology. And they're like, oh my God, he's a Manny Gen. And I'm like, no, he's not, he's a Gen. And they're like, no, he's a Manny Gen. And I rechecked and I was like, oh my God, he is a Manny Gen. This is how out of it I was that I typed in the time wrong. But then immediately I went to astrology and I looked at the time and I was like, well, he definitely is like at the tail end. Like he really held on to the Scorpio moon part.
Oh my
And then I checked
gosh.
the thing and it said Sag moon. And I'm like, wait a second. I remembered the time. It was supposed to be Saturday,
Mhm.
like 3 p.m. or something like that, or 2 p.m. Whatever, like was the switch. And he was born, or it was at 3 p.m. or whatever. And that was supposed to be the switch, and he was born at 2:45 p.m. And I was like, oh my God. But then I'm like, wait, I'm confused. And my mom said, Catherine, it was 3 p.m. East Coast, which is 12 p.m. Pacific. So he waited until the moon switched to Sag moon. And then his rising is also Sagittarius. So I was like, that
He's a
feels
triple
triple
fire.
fire. I was like, that's him through and through. I'm a triple air. He's a triple fire. I get along with fire signs very well. I'm like, this feels like him. So yeah,
Wait, one thing I want to add really quickly. Have you heard of the book called Cosmic Cradle?
no.
It's interesting. Like I love like past life regression books. Like it's my favorite,
Yeah.
but I started recently to start to explore like pre-life. So there's like a book called The Soul's Plan, one of my students gave to me. And then there's this other one called Cosmic Cradle. So it's more about pre-life, like the soul's choosing, which I always find really
Ooh, yeah.
fascinating. And in Cosmic Cradle, the one thing that I took from it that just I found really like beautiful and mind blowing is essentially the soul's intention around the astrological expression, like what they'll best be able to do. So there is this idea that comes through in that book that souls do choose like very specifically the time. And
Yeah.
that's a really big thing in astrology is like the blueprint. We call it the soul's blueprint because it's the idea that when you look at the natal chart, you are looking at the soul's intentionality, not by way of like destiny and things that are set in stone, but potential and challenges. And essentially, like, it's almost like priming a garden. Like, the garden has to be set for certain, whatever. I'm not a gardener. I wish I was. I wish I had a yard. I've lived in Southern California too long, but it's the same idea with the soul. It's beautiful. So I can't help but think of that in speaking
Yeah.
about him
Thinking
coming through.
like coming from that, there are a couple questions that relate to that. So I'll skip around
Yeah.
for just a second because I do want to go back to something major before we dive further in, which is
Yeah.
what if like someone asks, what if I'm born premature or like premature babies? Are they chose to be premature, right? They still chose that date and time.
It's so funny. I am premature. I was 6.5 weeks early.
Oh wow.
So my due date was June 2nd. So I was supposed to be a Gemini. But I was born April 17th, 1:09 in the morning. But my
Uh-huh.
chart is an Aries stellium in the third house, which is ruled by Gemini. So when an astrologer read my
Interesting.
chart for the first time, he goes, wow, you're like an Aries version of a Gemini. And I was like,
Oh,
that's really interesting because I was actually supposed to be a Gemini. And he's like, so the idea there, again, just perhaps piggybacking off of what I read in that book, Cosmic Cradle, that's definitely like an idea that there's no essential accident of like, oh, you're just born premature. It's really like, I think this goes pretty esoterically, but really just the power and the intentionality of the soul. And
mm-hmm.
that is something that, especially from like intuitive or esoteric astrology, that we're really fascinated in because it's like, what is the soul's intention? It's not very random. It's
Yeah.
very intentional. So I'll just say from someone who was born premature, my chart makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I still have a lot of that Gemini quality. So I wonder if for someone who is born premature, maybe you know your original birth date, see the
Mm,
similarities, see the differences. And, the way that I teach astrology, as you know, Catherine, is very intuitive. So I also like to empower anyone who's looking into their chart to not just listen to what everyone else says, but get to know the system themselves and use their intuition to see what really lights up in the body and what feels true.
oh,
Because you will be shown when you get
I
into it.
love that. What about someone had a great question, which is, what about planned C-sections? Like there's a scheduled date and time, right? And I have heard before just listening from friends and acquaintances and just being in the birth space
Yeah.
of some people worrying like, am I forcing something by scheduling my C-section? Am I like interfering with my baby's, natural like decision to be born at a certain time? Or is it that the baby is implanting kind of this seed into the 3D world that somehow the doctors or whoever chooses the time of the C-section, I'm sure it's like the hospital and the doctors, right? They're looking at the schedule. Like, is it all kind of co-creating in that way to where that baby, even though it's a planned C-section, they actually chose that planned C-section date and time?
Can you see how huge I'm smiling? Because I love talking to you. I love listening to you because all I hear is your Mercury in Scorpio, because that's where your Mercury is,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Like
Yeah.
it's just so it's my favorite because it's so deep and meta and like multi-perspective. It's the
Yeah.
best. But here's the thing, I would actually say, and again, this would really just be my intuition, not something I've specifically studied around like
Hmm.
planned C-sections. But I would say a bit of what you're talking about. Like, again, if the soul is intentional, um, and there is, and oftentimes, again, I'm not a mom yet, so I'm not super versed on all of this stuff, but C-sections I know sometimes can be for the health of the baby. Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
true?
Yeah.
So I think that like I had an experience a couple years ago where I had a mentor pass and I had a really, really just to contextualize this a little bit, how I think we're guided from the other side a lot of times. But I had a mentor pass who knew a very, very tumultuous old relationship that I was in. I had not heard or spoke to this person in like 6, 7 years. And then right after my mentor passed, and I'd still speak to him even though he was gone. And then not long after, one day when I was feeling him the most strongly, that ex showed up where I was eating lunch and apologized to me. And I couldn't help but feel like David had orchestrated, because he knew the last conversation I ever had with him was about how upset I was about that experience. So I
Wow.
bring up that story because I do feel like we are so in co-creation with the unseen, and especially the agreements that we form with children. And that's why astrology, I think, is so powerful, special, beautiful, fascinating, because it's a way for us to like translate the unseen.
Yeah.
So I think I would just invite any mom who maybe has worried about this not to worry, that there is an intentionality. And again, maybe to go a little deeper, you read that Cosmic Cradle book, because I think it'll give some deeper context around this topic and just help someone feel like they're not playing the hand of, God,
Yeah.
or playing or like making something that isn't in um, a co-creative dance, so to speak, with
Yeah.
their child.
Yeah, like an alignment of some sort.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. But what you said, what you said at the beginning.
I feel like this is like I don't feel like this is a large percentage of people listening to
Mhm.
the Manifestation Babe podcast. I feel like if you're already here, you're already into this shit. But there might be some people who need a little bit of, the scientific stuff, the scientific backing, like kind of an explanation of how would a planet have any effect on my personality, on my life purpose, on my past life or whatever. Let's just keep it to personality. Like let's get super scientific here. Like how would any planet determine like how I show up in the world or have any effect whatsoever on who I am? how
Yes.
is, how would you explain how astrology works to these types of people? I'm sure you've run into them. I'm sure you've come across them. I'm sure you have an answer to this, but just for someone who feels like, I don't know if I can further get into this episode until I hear something that would explain it on a more logical level for me.
Oh, I love this question. Okay, my Capricorn rising is ready. So many, many moons ago, when I was in my early 20s, I worked at a juice bar on Cahuenga, right across from Amoeba Records. And I basically became a little social scientist because those were my early days of studying astrology. And every person that would come in, I would ask their sign, like just within 3 seconds, and nothing's changed. I still do that. And I remember there was this guy shopping for supplements because it was like supplements, juices, all the things. And I'm chatting with him, helping him out. And I'm like, so when's your birthday? And he looks at me, he goes, oh, are you going to ask my astrology? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I don't believe in astrology. And I go, are you a Virgo? And he goes, yeah. And he actually was a Virgo. So that was really funny. But here's the thing. So just for anybody who is like, this gets a little too out there. How do I trust this?
Yeah.
What sense does this make? So I essentially, the first thing that I want to speak into is that the tropical system is based on the seasons. So I study Western astrology. That's what I've studied since I was 23. And the system that I study is the Western system, or the tropical system. Now, here's what's really fascinating about the tropical system is it is actually based on the seasons. So, and essentially the Gregorian calendar, where sidereal, which is actually what Vedic astrology is
Mm-hmm.
more so based on, is constellation based. And that's why sidereal and tropical can have moments with each other on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter, so I don't know, but I hear,
Yeah.
but essentially like which one's right. We're saying this, the constellations are here, but it's really just, think of it this way. It's really just a unique, basis of perspective. Because if you're using the basis as the stars, you're going to get a unique read versus a basis inside of like the seasons and more earth based.
Yeah.
So the thing that I always like to say, there's two parts of this. One's a little more grounded and practical. The other one's a little bit more meta. But very simply, think of it this way. The way that the system of astrology has been created over a long, long time, the system specifically, is really taking a look at what is going on with the planets. What are the degrees? It's very exacting. And think of it this way. So you are a cardinal air sign.
Mm-hmm.
Cardinal means that you are at the beginning of a season. I'm a cardinal fire. You and I are opposite signs. I'm an Aries. So
Mm-hmm.
we have this cardinal quality. Cardinal means beginning of a season. So that's how we roll. We're literally like, boom, like we burst on the scene. We're going into something, we spark, we start things. Like that's that cardinal frequency. And cardinal is the start of a season. Now, a fixed sign, like a fixed, let's say fixed earth, like Taurus, middle of the season, Gemini, mutable, changing of the season between spring to summer. So that's a unique thing where within the system, we actually look at the season to create characteristics. And that's why it can be easy once you understand the system of astrology. People think it's like so out there, but it's just a system based on characteristics. And
Yeah.
once you understand the characteristics, it's really fascinating to then you can apply them. And it seems magical, but it's actually just very rooted in a complete system. Now, the second piece, the moon pulls the tides of the ocean. I think our bodies are like 73% water.
Yeah. Something like
So
that.
yeah, like, so for many women, our menstruation, we're on a lunar cycle. Now, why would just one planet have an interaction and a jurisdiction with one gender or one part of the population? That's impossible.
Yeah.
There is an interaction between planetary bodies and our bodies. So why would not the rest? This is just my idea, again,
Yeah.
from
I
studying
love this
this for so
explanation.
long.
Yeah.
It's like, why would Mercury not have some interaction why would Mars not have some interaction?
Yeah.
Why would Pluto not have some interaction? So that's always how, look, I'm not the most logical. People who like hyper logical responses usually they don't fuck with me. They're literally like, okay, honey. But that little piece has always been an interesting talking point of just like, why, if we can accept that the moon pulls the tides of the ocean and
Like moves the
engages.
whole ocean.
And
And then there's
we are
little old
made of
you.
body.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have these interactions. And even Mick, like my husband, he is like a freaking 25 planets in Capricorn. Just kidding. But he's like uber duper Capricorn, Saturn ruled, proof in the pudding kind of guy, very scientific, Mercury and Aquarius. So I knew that when we got together, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. But he has really, over the time that we've been together, he's like, Natalia, I cannot help but all the things that you bring forward. And like, I'll give you one example. His family's business, one time during a Mercury retrograde, their entire like credit card system and air conditioning system or
Yep.
some big metal thing in their business went completely haywire. And I'm
Yep.
like, oh, baby, did you know that Mercury retrograde started yesterday? He's like, it's uncanny. It's uncanny. And Mercury is a gigantic metal planet. It is filled with metal and it doesn't necessarily go backwards, but it does when it retrogrades, it stops its motion because it's gotten too far in front of the sun. That's like the astronomical piece of it. But anyhow, what the heck, right? Like
Yeah.
all of these planets and all of these, the ways that I just, sometimes I'll end with this little, I'll end this with this, but essentially I think about it. The thing that I love about astrology is that I don't completely understand how it works, but
Mm-hmm.
there is a feeling, there is a knowing
Yeah.
that is so beyond my logic
Yep.
that it just makes sense.
Yep.
And that is the piece that science can't always cover, that logic can't always cover, but it's that piece of faith where you don't need someone to tell you and give you every fact. It is something you feel. And I
Yep.
always say astrology is for those you feel it. And some people don't feel it. Maybe there's a different system that speaks to them.
For
For a lot
sure.
of
Like
people,
human
human
design.
design,
Yeah.
yeah, is
Yeah.
it's a little bit less esoteric, even though human design is deeply
Oh,
esoteric and
yes.
astrology is a part of
Using
human design.
exactly, and it uses other esoteric systems to create something that seems like it's not esoteric, but it actually
Yes.
is. In human design, and I'm probably going to butcher this.
No,
There's an
you're about to
explanation.
say what I'm about to say. Say it. I know
What?
exactly what you're going to say. Not the nootropics.
Neutrinos.
Yeah, I was the
Yes.
nootropics. That's
Wait,
like a
that's
brain thing.
crazy. Wait, that's
Neutrinos. See, so human design explains like when I'm like a baby student in human design, but I love it.
yeah,
And
same.
what, yeah, it's just, I love it. And it's honestly made me a better astrologer, like reading and getting deeper into human design. But neutrinos, when I learned about those from like my girl, Erin Claire, I was like, what?
Oh my God, I
That
love
is
Erin. She needs to come on the podcast too.
best. Oh my God, she is the best. And she has had her baby
Yeah.
Willow, who's a Manny Gen too.
Yeah, I know.
And a Sag. So it's just, when I heard the concept of neutrinos, I was like, oh, that's the unexplainable piece of understanding the interaction between planetary movement, planetary placement, and the human being.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it's just, I geek on it so hard. It's
Yeah.
so fascinating. But yeah, exactly what you're going to say. Neutrinos to me is essentially what we're talking about in that kind of mystical force that is truly beyond logic. It's
Yeah.
something that you just have to be like, I'm open to this or I'm not. But either way, it's working in your life, which
Yeah.
is fascinating.
They say that like Ra Uru, which is the guy who channeled the human
Mhm.
design system, learned about neutrinos from The Voice, and I think he like learned it, I channeled it 10 years before scientists discovered that there actually is such thing as a neutrino.
Gives me chills.
And basically, like neutrinos are like, for example, there's cosmic rays that shoot out these subatomic particles that carry masses of information.
Yes.
And before it was like confusing because it's like, how can subatomical particles carry masses? But they do. They've proven it scientifically. You guys can look this up. And basically, within those masses are information.
Yeah.
And so there's information being spread. Like I think that at the time that human design was channeled, there was a massive like amount of neutrinos that flooded our planet.
1987.
Yeah, and so
Hmm.
whoever picked up this information picked up some good information. And basically, like when you're born, when you come out of the womb, when you go from soul to human body, whatever neutrinos are currently being passed at that time in that location on that date from whatever planet, like each planet, is cosmic rays. I mean, I don't know technically exactly how this happens, but like there's cosmic rays that come from the sun, there's cosmic rays that come from the moon. Like every single one of these planets that Natalia is talking about though, and especially the archetypes that you go into are those neutrinos. Like you're getting the neutrinos from those different archetypes, and that's literally what your soul said. I want these. Like your soul knew the neutrinos were going to come through, but like let's keep it logical for now. Your human body is accepting or allowing those neutrinos, or not even allowing. It happens whether you allow it or not. The neutrinos are passing through, and then therefore those bits of information get into your unconscious, and then that's how what you express throughout your lifetime. So that's like the explanation that's made so much sense for me. Not that I ever doubted it. Like I'm one of those people where I'm like, I've been esoteric since I was born. It's just like I was forced to be more logical growing up and forced to be
Yes.
more scientific, but I've always known that science is just trying to prove what's already been in the
Yes.
spiritual. Like science is
Yes.
only catching up. It's not that there's like any separation between the two. It's just like science has not caught up to explain a lot of this esoteric-ish seeming stuff that exists. It's
That's it.
just that as time goes on, we get more information, and then people are like, oh, look, maybe manifestation is actually real after all. And I'm over here like talking about it long before it was ever cool. Someone the other day commented on Instagram saying the only reason why my business is successful is because I'm riding on the coattails of manifestation as a buzzword. And I'm literally like, ma'am, when I started talking about manifestation, people literally like handed back, like I would give them books because I wasn't a teacher yet. I just was a huge student of it back when I was like 16, 17, 18 years old. And people literally hand me the books back and be like, this is a load of crap. And
Oh
then when I
my
would post about
God.
it on Instagram, people would be like, what the hell are you talking about, ma'am? And so,
Dude, that
anyway,
is so, but it's so beautiful. And I just keep hearing and seeing your Mercury in Scorpio because your willingness to just express that which, because that's that scorpionic frequency. I'll speak into this real quickly, but it's like truth bearing. And that's why, like, if you ever see an astrology meme, like having a moment about Scorpio, it's just
yeah,
because Scorpio is so committed to truth and to really going deep. And so when you have a Mercury in Scorpio, like you're just like, I have to share this. This is just, it's essentially like a very powerful channeling placement as well. You
interesting.
channel things before they're necessarily popular. It's having that kind of just that willingness to see and allow what you feel to be expressed. And Scorpios are typically very comfortable doing that. It depends,
And
of course, but
yeah,
it could be an archetype of the Scorpio, that scorpionic placement.
you are intuitively picking up on my questions because someone was like, why do Scorpios get so much flack? Why are they just misunderstood? And I have to say, like, my growing up, my stepsister was a Scorpio, and I just associated all Scorpios with my stepsister. And I was like, I personally didn't like Scorpios, or I thought I didn't like them. And now I have a bunch in my life, and I'm like, no, they're pretty cool. And then I learned that I have a ton of Scorpio energy. My second house is in Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
My
Mm-hmm.
Pluto, my Venus, a Mercury, all in Scorpio. Lots of Scorpio energy. And then I'm like, okay, maybe they're not so bad, because then like I'd be bad. So like, what's the deal with Scorpios? Is it what you just said? Like they're very truth speaking, and some people think that they're a little bit too blunt and too forceful, or like what?
Here is my sort of super, super way too deep that nobody even asked for explanation of why I think why I think there's a moment that people will have with Scorpios because basically, so Scorpio is ruled before Pluto was discovered as a planet, and now, according to mainstream science, Pluto isn't a planet, but to astrology, we still utilize it as
Yeah.
a planet.
I like Pluto.
Me too. I love Pluto, and Pluto's important, and Pluto is about to move into Aquarius. So there's lots going on. But here's the thing, like, Pluto is a, its frequency has to do with deep transformation, death, the subconscious, not always so much physical death, but the death of the ego
Mm,
and things that humans don't really love to face, where it's like deep transformation, deep change, deep feeling, death, the death of the ego. Now, Scorpio's original ruler before Pluto was discovered um was Mars. And when Pluto was discovered, which I believe was sometime in the 20th century, like mid 20th century or late 19th century, I don't remember. But when Pluto was discovered, astrologers were like, oh, this is the ruler of Scorpio. This makes way more sense. But Scorpios still have that Mars Pluto dichotomy going on. One of my best friends is a Scorpio. And even though she's a Scorpio, doesn't have a ton of fire in her chart, she's got some Sag going on. We just understand each other because as an Aries, my ruler is Mars. Mars is that intense go getter warrior, go first, take action. It's a very full on energy. So think of the scorpionic personality, Mars and Pluto. Okay, that's a lot going on. But
yeah.
Scorpio, the archetype of Scorpio, they say is the alchemist or the seer. And Scorpios are just they're very deep. They're very sensitive. They are fixed water. So just like the stubbornness of Taurus, which is typically associated with stubbornness, well, Scorpios can get emotionally fixated because their element is water, their modality is fixed. So they can get really just like, that's why the quality of obsessiveness can be associated with Scorpio. But by the way, we all have every single sign animated in our personality, but some more than others, which is your placements. So before talk shit on any sign, and I have
Yeah.
to call myself forward about this sometimes too, but it's like it's all animated within us, but some are more specifically. So with Scorpio, I just think Scorpios have this depth that not many people want to venture to.
Mm-hmm.
And
That
not to
makes
say all
sense.
Scorpios, because we can never stereotype in astrology. Like, if you want to stereotype in astrology, you're getting the most shallow version of what's possible. There are billions of combinations in a chart. So not everyone's going to express similarly. But with Scorpio, that Mars energy, that warrior like energy, that action energy, and the intensity of Pluto transformation and depth,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't always fly with everybody, but at the same time, when a Scorpio is coming from the heart, they are just magnificent because, as I said, they have that seer quality. So they're very attuned. And again, when they're coming from the heart and not the ego, they have the propensity to help you take deep accountability in your life because for again, the Scorpio coming from heart, they take the deepest accountability and they know the reward on the other side. Pluto, just like Saturn, is a very intense planet, but when we show up for the challenges,
Mm-hmm.
the reward on the other side of the challenge is beyond what a Jupiter or a Venus energy could
Oh,
deliver.
I want to speak on that for a second because, again, you were literally picking up on all my questions. I have a Pluto in Scorpio in my second house, which to anyone unfamiliar with the second house, the main thing that I know about the second house is that it's the house of money, right?
Yes,
And I think that
yes.
people might think like, oh God, this means that I'm not going to have success in that area, or it's going to be like this really bad thing, or it's going to be a lot of bad luck, or whatever they think of Pluto or these more like
They're called
negative
malefic.
aspect.
Yeah, they're
There
called
we go,
malefic
malefic
planets.
placements. But I feel like my second house is doing pretty okay. So can you speak to this? a little bit. Can you explain
I'll
this?
never forget when I saw your chart and I was so excited because, I've been into you for a long time. So when I get to see the chart of people that like, I know their work, like I follow them. Cause again, I'm a total geek and I call myself a social scientist. And I say that in a silly way because I like to see what the expression of someone is and then what their chart is like. And what I
Yeah.
found so freaking wild about you, Catherine, is that you have Chiron in the 10th house, which Chiron is your most public point. I'm sorry. Erase that. The 10th house is your most public point, and Chiron is deep emotional and spiritual healing. And then your second house, which is also associated with success, stability, finances, you've got some heavy hitters in there. Like you've got Pluto in
Right?
there.
Right?
And the idea is that so let's just talk specifically about Pluto in your second. When
Yeah.
I saw that, I was like, oh my God, she has found a way to dance with this energy so that it could deliver what the gifts and what a lot of people would probably feel. And here, I'll rewind that. But what I think what happens for many of us, myself included at times, is we see the challenge as something there to level us. When the challenge is not there to level us, it's there to help us rise. And
Mm,
your Pluto in the second house of money, I know your journey with money because you've talked about it
yeah.
and the way that you were able to transform and catalyze. That is the Pluto placement. And everybody has a Pluto placement. So you are meant to catalyze some shadow, some darkness, some deep pain to therefore create some powerful, unspeakable reward on the other side. And the thing with Pluto is it's kind of secretive, just like Scorpio
Mhm.
energy. Like it's got
Yeah.
secrets, it's got things that it holds. So it's not going to dangle it like a Jupiter placement where it's like, hey, do this. Here's this on the other side. There is unspeakable magic when we're willing to show up for the pain, the challenge, and the depth of our Pluto placement. So you really did that with the money stuff. You really figured out what sign is it in again?
Um, Scorpio.
Oh,
Second house in
Scorpio in the
Scorpio.
second house.
Pluto. Yes.
Holy
Right?
shit. Because,
Yeah.
Pluto naturally rules Scorpio. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay. So, again, it's like double the Scorpio energy. So, going deep, not taking money at face value, but going into the depth of how it works in like the energetic sense, the emotional sense, all of the things that
That
you've
explains
done.
my life. Yeah. And like my Jupiter is in my 12th house, which I know is the subconscious, and I'm
Yes.
obsessed with subconscious. And anytime I've created a lot of success in my life just teaching on the
Yes.
subconscious and how to manifest
Exactly.
using your subconscious. So that always seemed more obvious to me. And then just like connecting it to like the huge rewards that are kind of gonna come out of you really facing the subconscious parts of
Yes.
money where your
Yes.
Pluto is, it's like wham bam, thank you, ma'am.
And here's the thing with your Jupiter, not to skip around, but
We can
I'm sure
skip around.
everyone's going to want to know this. But
Yeah, yeah.
what's really fascinating, Catherine, about your Jupiter, I'm assuming it's in Libra.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
because your ascendant's in Libra.
Jupiter and Libra. Yeah,
So Jupiter in Libra in the 12th house. So what's
yeah.
fascinating about this is Libra is the archetype of the harmonizer, balancing, beautifying. And then the 12th house is the realm of the soul, the subconscious, and deep spiritual healing. Have
Hmm.
you not beautified and harmonized that process and why you have tapped into that gift and into those Jupiterian gifts and blessings and
Mm,
expansion is because you unlocked that combination. Most people look at their placements, and I know this just from teaching this for so many years, and they're like, Natalia, that doesn't go together. That doesn't make sense. And I'm like, you're thinking, I say this with love, but I'm like, you're thinking way too logically. I'm like, you've got to look like if it's here for a reason. And if you're willing to get creative and trust the feeling and the subtleties of your heart, you're going to unlock it. But if I looked at my Venus in Pisces in the second house and was like, Pisces and money don't go together, which is an old, like, let's say that's like an old thing in astrology because that
Yeah.
has been said with Neptune. Not true. I teach the, let's say, like the spiritual depth around financial stability. So it all goes
Yeah.
together. You just have to get creative and be like,
Yeah.
how can I unlock this? And so for you, babe, I geek on your chart because you're living it so powerfully. And it's, I love it because your students here, your listeners, your community, they know you. So then to hear the astrological placements, it's just freaking fascinating. It
Oh,
shows what's possible for all of us when we
yeah.
get into it.
I totally agree. Speaking of money, can our charts show us where the money is? I know you kind of spoke on that. Like, yeah, anything can lead to money, but
Yeah.
like there's a lot of talk about, I just like let's go into like TikTok astrology, which
I
is
knew
like what
you were
my
going to
mom
say,
does all day long.
why are we like,
We're
we're
s-
just feeding off one another
we
psychically. Cause I
really
was like, my
are.
girl's about to talk about TikTok. I can feel it. Okay,
It's
let's do
crazy,
it.
right? Well, random TikTok astrologers or astrologists, okay, whatever you guys Googled, okay, use that one, whatever is more accurate. Um, like they'll just talk about like if you have this in this sign or this in this house, like this
Yeah.
means money,
I don't
this
like that. I
no
don't like
money.
that.
Okay,
I don't
so
like that.
so talk about that.
There's possibility in every placement. And that's what I teach because I don't think we should use such a powerful system against ourselves. Like
Mm,
your astrology isn't there. Like, of course, there is an element of destiny to understanding your natal chart, but remember, you are a creative being. So you are creating through your life. The planets do not compel you to do anything, but if you are living from your subconscious. So Carl Jung was an astrologer and he has an incredible quote. I might have to Google it, but it's something like, if you do not understand the workings of your subconscious, you will experience things and call
oh, I
them,
love this
it's
quote.
really powerful. Like you'll
Wait, I wrote this
experience things
down
and
somewhere.
just call them like fated. But the idea is like when we can
Yes, here.
understand, oh, read
When
it.
Oh,
Yes.
I literally wrote this down like the other day in Fiji. I don't know
Let's
where
do it.
I think it came from a
Read
book I
it.
was reading.
It's so
It's
special.
so good. When an inner when an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. That one?
That's it.
Yes.
Hmm.
So good.
And this, I always like to be just mindful and respectful because, of course, there are certain oppressive systems where we don't want you to think, oh, I move through something that feels extremely collectively biased and unfair. This is more so speaking about the things that we can handle in our own unique expression of moving through the challenges in our lives, the things where it's like, okay, this is occurring right now in this moment. What can I do with this? How can I shift my relationship to this thing? And what happens so often is we all move unconsciously through our lives and we don't understand the power of the unconscious. And so as you talked about, babe, with the neutrinos and the planets and all of the things, well, your chart is essentially moving and animating unconsciously. And when you become conscious of it, you can move it consciously.
Mm,
And that to me is where we take the power back instead of just being at the whim of what's told to us at the collective or what we've been told growing up or what we're told by people around us, but instead understanding ourselves at that deep, prolific level. So that to me is why astrology is empowering because we can return, don't use it against yourself. So anyways,
yeah.
I go on rants every time people say
No, I
things
love it.
like that because I'm like, I don't want you to look at it's like a closed door because it's not. There's
Yeah.
possibility and opportunity in every placement.
I have an interesting question just to piggyback off of that. I
Yeah.
know that you have a positive spin for everything. I know that. Like, I just know you. But, like, what is a placement that you see in someone's
Yes.
chart that makes you go, oh no?
Oh my gosh. Well, here's the thing. Let's see. Like some of them can be challenging, but it's not actually a placement. It's actually, they're called aspects. So
Okay.
squares and most oppositions are very challenging. Squares are challenging.
Okay.
I have a lot of them in my chart. Like I've
Okay.
overcome a lot to figure out my makeup. I wouldn't say it's any specific placement other than if I see like Pluto and Mars tightly conjunct in a water sign.
Mm,
But then again, I
mm,
have 7 planets in fire. So water signs overwhelm me because I'm just
yeah.
like a fire. I'm like a fire creature. So I wouldn't say specifically there's any one placement where I'm like, oh no, but I will guide. I don't do sessions anymore, but I will guide a client or a student to be like, hey, here is something that is likely very challenging for you or has created challenge or pain in your past. Here is the key to unlock it. And that's what we
Yeah.
can really look at with the aspects
Okay.
most specifically. But there's no one placement that is like negative because, again, they can all be made out of something. But I'll tell you
Right.
something really interesting. I wish if astrology was more mainstream, I just wish I could walk up to someone and be like, hey, you're having this experience in your life. Can I look at your chart? Because I want to see what's going on in there and like how can we unlock some of the squares, oppositions, potent conjunctions to create opportunity? Because that's what the chart does.
That's so interesting. So like let's say I do see some squares and oppositions like in the I'm on an app called what is this? My mom. This is my mom from TikTok, okay? She like gives me the apps and stuff. And like some stuff is really good. What is this app? I think it's Time
Oh,
Passages.
I was going to say that's my app. That's
Oh,
my favorite app. I won't say it's
there we go.
not my app. I wish, but no, that's a labor of love to make an app like that. But no,
Oh my
that is
God.
the app that I use and that I
Okay.
suggest to everyone to use.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I'm
so
on
good.
Time Passages Pro and I really love the explanations of things. There's a lot to go into here. And of course, like even having all these explanations, I still want to hear what Natalia has to say because her explanations I think are better. But like let's say I see some squares and some squares and oppositions and yes, which are strong aspects. So like let's say like this thing says, hey, like shit luck in this, part of your life because of this square.
It's not
How would
going
I
to say
approach
that.
this? How
It's
would I
not going to
approach
say
this?
that. So here's the thing. Actually, I love this question, babe. I love it. You're like, you put a positive spin on it. That's my Sag moon. I'm like, there's opportunity
Yeah.
in everything.
I mean,
Like,
I do the same thing.
what? Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to. It's like, we have to hold to the energy of possibility.
Hmm.
Otherwise, we just
You
lean
get
into our negative
depressed.
we lean into our negativity bias, which we all have, and we
Yep.
don't have the energy we move into inertia. So, okay, so here's something that actually can be challenging for every single one of us, Chiron. So,
Hmm.
Chiron is what's known as the wounded
I
healer.
have a square, Chiron square Pluto.
Girl, that's potent. So,
That's a
that would
shit luck right
probably,
there, huh?
you have Chiron. Do you have Chiron in Aries?
It's actually in
I'm
Leo, which
sorry,
is
Leo.
Leo, which
Yes.
is my
I
mom, and Orion, which is very interesting.
Okay, so that's powerful. So Chiron in Leo square your Pluto in Scorpio. So that is a very, very powerful aspect. But Catherine, think about your life experience. Um, what house is Leo found in for you? So
Um,
what house is the Chiron
yeah.
in?
Hold on. Chiron is in the 11th house.
Okay, so 11th house Chiron squaring Pluto in your second
Second
house of
house.
money. Dang, babe. Okay. So Chiron is found in the 11th house, which is groups of people, life vision. Wait, your Chiron isn't in your 11th, it's in your 10th.
No, it's in 11th.
No
Are
way.
you sure?
I'm almost positive. I was just talking about your Chiron in the 10th. Maybe your Chiron is in the
Well,
11th. Can
well,
I see your
see,
chart?
yeah. Hold on.
We got to
Here.
get to the bottom of this. Okay. Okay,
Can you see that?
You have Mars in the 10th
Yes.
and then Chiron in the 11th. Okay, so thank you. So the 11th house is the house of hopes and dreams, large groups of people that you may never meet. The top of the chart is
Mm,
usually ascribed to the way people see you, the way the public sees you, like your outward expression.
yeah. Yeah.
And then the lower part of the chart is your more unconscious private self. So you'll
Interesting.
find oftentimes people with very active 10th and 11th houses are usually in the public eye in some capacity. And with the 11th house Chiron, you are healing through man, this is powerful. Let me see if I can synthesize this. You are essentially doing deep spiritual work through large groups of people.
I mean, that makes sense.
And the fact that it squares your Pluto, so Pluto is a power placement. But Catherine, I also know you've gone through a lot
Oh,
to
yeah.
continue to like step forward, be seen, deep, deep work on
Yes.
yourself.
Yep.
And that is that potent exchange rather, between Chiron and Pluto. Because Pluto is like, if you want to create power in your life and the lives of others and financial stability, creative strategy, physical manifestation, you must heal. And you likely first started to heal through, this is going to sound interesting, but Leo rules the heart. So it's like heart energy. And then the 11th house is, I wonder if you even got involved in groups that could help you understand yourself more deeply. I have a feeling you did a bit of this alone, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same
Yeah.
time, there's still a quality of healing with groups so
Yeah.
you can heal groups of people. Does that make sense?
It does. It totally does. Whoa. Okay.
That's a powerful one. I was going to say, if somebody has Chiron square Pluto, that would be powerful to experience.
So, like, then by me doing the healing work, I am approaching my square and turning into an opportunity rather than something that can deeply hinder me.
Exactly. Like, whereas at first, I'm sure things felt a little bit, things with an aspect like that, I'm sure at the onset of freaking scaling that mountain, it almost feels impossible.
Yeah,
But
for
when you're
sure.
willing to just like put one foot in front of the other, and you have like the thing with the Chiron placement, you have to trust whatever your version of a universal force is. You have to trust like something beyond your mind because Chiron's intense. It's a powerful, it's an asteroid, it's a dwarf planet, but it's a powerful placement in our charts. Like when people
Mm.
have Chiron returns,
Yeah.
um, you move through some deep metamorphosis. So otherwise
When are the
known as a
Chiron
midlife crisis. So when people have midlife crisis, they're actually having a
that's
Chiron
Chiron?
return. Yeah, they're having a Chiron return.
So is that when you're like 50 years old? What would you say?
Yeah, let me see how long it takes Chiron to transit. This is what I'm Googling all day long. How long does it take Chiron? Oh my God. I love when Google is like, I have no idea what you're typing. Sometimes
Right.
it can like figure it out. How long
Right.
does it take Chiron to go
Because people are
around?
familiar with Saturn, Saturn return being 29 years. Everyone
Yeah.
knows Saturn.
Yeah. We
Everyone
have
talks about
returns of
Saturn.
everything except for like the outer planets because we don't, supposedly we don't live till we're 250. Hold on. It's not giving
Supposedly.
me supposedly. I mean, if you get on YouTube, you can find all kinds of things. Hold on. I'm not, when Google gives you those, yes, a
50
Chiron
years.
return occurs around when you turn 50. And so you know how they usually
Interesting.
say in that time frame and then the second Saturn return is like 54.
Oh,
So that Chiron
shit.
check-in is the same as a Saturn return. The second Saturn return isn't typically as intense. Look, the only way that your returns will be intense is if you've been ignoring yourself. Because we all, whether we're aware of it or not, we do have a spiritual component to us. And not to say everybody has to think this way or believe this, but the soul has a purpose for the way it moves through an incarnation. And if we want to go there, it's really looking at the planetary movement and how it compels us to grow and deepen throughout our lifetime. Nobody is
Hmm.
immune from challenge.
No.
Nobody.
Right.
So the planets have these almost like cosmic check-ins, but again, you're experiencing them through you. It's not the planets doing anything to
It's
you.
not like they're knocking at your door and being, hello.
Yeah, like when people have moments with like how terrible certain planets are, I'm just like, I invite them to like take ownership, because it's not about anything that's doing it to them. It's like, how do I put this? It's just like, how can I metabolize this through my experience? And sometimes you're not ready to do that. Like it takes time. Like
Yeah.
I never ask anyone that I work with to rush that process of understanding. But yeah, Chiron returns are powerful.
Okay. Amazing.
And yeah, the midlife crisis
That
is the
makes so much
Chiron
sense.
return,
That
which is
makes so much
fascinating.
sense. Isn't that funny that like there's explanations for everything?
There's
Check the
astrological
planets.
explanations for everything.
Okay, what are your personal favorite signs, houses, placements? Like what do you see in a chart that makes you go, "Ooh, this is
Oh my
fun and
God, I love
exciting."
you. I would never choose a specific sign. Obviously, I really like being an Aries, but it has its moments.
I married one, so I
I
know.
know, I know. I love Brennan so much. When I see him, like when you guys are interacting, I just see the astrology. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's so good. But here's the thing. So I would say what I love to see in a chart is very simply here's what I look for. I like to look at elements. So I like to see what elements are animated and predominant, because when I help someone see what elements are, I'll say this again, but predominantly animated in their personality, it gives you so much permission to be yourself, to
Hmm.
run your energy the way you run your energy. Some people, like I'm a fire sign with 7 or 8 planets in fire, all air, and a very little bit of earth, very little bit of water. So I run energy and move through my life very differently than my husband, who is like I said, 25 planet. He's all the earth and all the water, tiny bit
Yeah.
of air, tiny bit of fire.
Yeah.
So I love when I look at a chart to see what is going on in terms of the elements. But Catherine, you're not about to make me pick a favorite sign.
Okay, favorite house then. Favorite
Well,
placement.
as a business and money mentor, I love looking at the 10th house.
Oh, 10th house.
Oh yeah,
Wait,
what were you gonna say? Second house too. Second house is money.
yeah.
But
And 10th
again,
house
they
is
go
career.
deeper than that. And 10th house is career,
So is that like
business.
someone asked like are there hold on, it has something to do with like entrepreneurial placements. Are there any useful
Yeah.
placements for entrepreneurs or something that can kind of predict this person doesn't like to be told what to do and wants to be their own boss?
Well, yeah, there are for sure. So first, something that I teach without spinning off into another like geekery direction, but very simply, I teach something called traverses. And what
Oh.
these are, just I'll explain this as simply as possible because it's really cool once you grasp it. But what I help people do with traverses is it's actually taking the house rulers a step further. Which I never really learned house rulers in my studies. So that's why, as an Aries astrologer and reading thousands of charts at this point, they're just things I've come to just really see just from utilizing the system and seeing what can happen beyond just what traditionally is taught.
Hmm.
So in the 10th house, which is synonymous with, let's say, entrepreneurship, business, career, long-term goals, success, impact that you want to make over a long, long period of time. So basically, what you can look at with the traverse is you can look at the zodiac sign or signs that are traversing the house. It has nothing to do with planets. It has everything to
Mm,
do with the signs that are, I call it traversing because I get this funny thing. And when I teach it, I literally get out of my chair and I walk across the screen because I'm like, I'm traversing your 10th house. So think of if I'm walking across the 10th house, I want
yeah.
to know what zodiac signs are there and how are they animating that part of my life. So if I have Aries and Taurus, predominantly Aries in the 10th house, that's going to give me some interesting, like archetypal information about how that person relates to their career, their business. And I would say Aries traverse the 10th doesn't necessarily mean solely entrepreneurship, but definitely an entrepreneurship type placement, only because Aries do not like being told what to do. So they need to be
No.
in some kind of leadership. She's like, I know, you don't have to tell me twice.
I have like what my 10th house my 10th house has and I always forget how to read these things, but it's like I know my Mars is in the 10th house in Cancer, but also my 10th
Yes.
house crosses Leo. So like
Yeah.
what exactly am I looking at?
So your traverses are Cancer and Leo, and that's what animates your 10th house of business. So Cancer is the archetype of the nurturer,
Mm,
and the archetype of Leo is like the performer,
interesting.
the nurturing
Interesting.
performer in your business.
I am the nurturing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Manifestation Babe podcast. I am your nurturing performer today.
And Leo is about expression. So it's just like shining. It's like, how can I shine bold, big? But the
Mm.
Cancer energy is very emotionally attuned and genuinely wants to take care of people at a spiritual and emotional level.
Well, that
Sounds
makes so
like
much
you to me.
sense. Yeah, I was gonna say it makes so much sense. Okay, let's start to pick up the pace just a little bit on some of these questions. I just want to
Let's do
touch a
it.
few more, and I know we're already over the hour, which I could talk to you for like a bazillion hours. So we'll probably have part two and three and four and 20.
Let's do it.
Okay, a big question. This is just interesting. I was asking people for questions like that normally don't show up in other podcasts about astrology. At
Mhm.
least I haven't heard anyone talk about this. Like, can a chart predict your death? That was an interesting question.
I've never, okay, so I'll tell you guys an interesting, very quick story. So again, as that social scientist piece of of being an astrologer is again, you're not just looking to, so personally, I don't do predictive astrology, but there are definitely movements and what would be the word combinations where you could explore how something could mean something specific. So that's like my very political answer. So here's the thing. When my best friend's father passed, I actually, and she did this willingly because she's very into astrology. So
Yeah.
basically we were on the phone and she was like, would you be willing to look at his, making a chart of the moment he passed? Cause I know when he passed. And I was like, okay, let's look. And there was a very, very interesting synthesis of Chiron and his 12th house and the part of fortune. But here's the thing, or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is again, you don't want, number one, I hate to break it to everybody, but we're not getting out of here alive. And that's just, just the rules. And in addition to that, there are so many combinations that someone could look at to explore the actual physical passing. I personally, I don't, I don't want to know, to be honest. And
Right. Me
I don't
neither.
think anybody wants to know. I
But
mean,
you know what's
hopefully not,
strange,
but
Natalia? My
what
mom, she says she knows at what age she's gonna die. And she
really,
keeps repeating it. And I'm like, Mom, shut the fuck up. I don't
I
want to
know.
know. Like,
Joseph
stop
Murphy
saying
would
that.
say, stop saying that.
Right. And then she's like, no, every psychic I've ever talked to has agreed with me. And I'm like, Mom, like, why would you
Oh,
want to know that? And she's like, actually, it gives me so much peace knowing I still have time. And at the same time, I don't have all that much time. And so I need to like live it up a little bit. For
I
me, I don't want to
honor
know.
that. I don't want to know either. And here's the thing, like they're like I've seen this Googled. You know how there's like typical Googled answers of
Yeah.
things?
Yeah.
And so many people Google stuff like that.
Such an
Like, does
interesting.
Pluto going across your 12th house? Like, well, I just survived a Pluto going through my 12th house. It transformed my entire relationship to my subconscious and
Oh,
physically how I look because Pluto crossing your ascendant is how you physically look. If you see old photos of me, I am a completely
what?
different person. So
Wait,
remember
I
that
want to know this. Like, I want to know if this happened to me or will happen, like when this is going to happen.
it's a so for Capricorn ascendants, that is I actually found this really cool blog many eons ago, and the guy did this whole thing about Capricorn ascendants because we had Pluto cross the ascendant or Pluto going through the 12th.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be next for the Aquarius ascendants. So depending on where their ascendant degree is, they will have Pluto moving through their 12th house. And the powerful thing about Pluto through the 12th is it's very deepening, where you have to like go into the soul. You have to pay attention to the subconscious. And then
Interesting.
Pluto crossing the ascendant will physically transform how you appear and how you put yourself out to other people. But the thing is there's other things in the chart that can do this as well, but maybe nothing as profound and deep and even challenging as Pluto. But
You're
remember,
giving me
Pluto has
shit to Google.
rewards. I know, remember, I never say this to be like, oh God, like our eyes start going, glazing over. But the thing is that Pluto, remember, it has rewards within it. So when we're
Yeah.
willing to show up for the process, there's unspeakable magic that comes from it, which my life is it's a testament of that.
You said part of fortune, and I remember looking into this many different times, kind of reading it, and nothing really stuck from it, but I
Yeah.
keep hearing it. What is part of fortune?
So the part of fortune is actually, it's not a planet. It's a mathematical equation, essentially, based on your sun, moon, and rising. And if you have a day chart or night chart. So don't ask me how to
Interesting.
calculate it. I have no
There's a
idea,
calculator.
but
I'm doing it right now, you guys. You can just Google
yeah,
part of fortune calculator.
exactly. So it's basically a calculation. It brings together your sun, your moon, your ascendant, and then has a specific calculation based on if you're a night chart or a day chart. And then it'll give you your part of fortune placement. The part of
I'm in
fortune,
Pisces.
nice. What house?
Hold on. How can I tell? I don't think it's telling me.
Where's Pisces in your chart?
Where is Pisces? Good question. Hold on. I feel like I'm pulling up so many windows and tabs right now and apps. Hold on.
Welcome to my life. Like, especially
Pisces.
anytime I'm talking about or researching astrology, it's like all the tabs are open.
Wait, what does Pisces look like again? Because I don't have any planets in there. I don't see in the
So
list, but
Pisces is like look at my fingers really quick.
hold
It goes
on.
like this, and then there's the line in between. It's the two
Yeah.
fishes.
Yeah. So I see it crossing this. Oh, yeah, never mind. I have something in Pisces, I think. Fifth and because it's part of fortune in here. Duh. So fifth and sixth house. So it's mostly in the fifth, a little bit in the sixth.
There we go. So is your part of fortune in the fifth?
Yeah.
Okay, so is mine, interestingly enough. It's in
Interesting.
Gemini, but
Interesting.
wherever the part of fortune is, that can be where you have a specific talent. The part of fortune, I love it. I mean, it's fun. It's kind of like a unique octave of Jupiter or Venus. It's kind of just like as the first astrologer put it that I ever learned from, he's like kind of like extra tokens for the arcade. There's kind of like not a fun quality, but just sort of like a Super Mario boost quality and to that area of your life. So for you, your part of fortune is in the archetype of the spiritualist creative in the area of creativity, inner child, self-expression.
Okay. So that's where I hold my talents, you said?
It can be a place that you have a gift or a special talent that you can activate. It's also can be known as like a prosperity placement too. So when you tap it, you can create prosperity
Well,
and
talking about
purpose.
money, you guys, like there's another placement right there for you. Okay, I have one last question, I
Okay.
think, and we'll wrap this up here, even though, like I said, we can
I've
keep
had
going.
so much fun. We both said before we even came on, we were going to have a blast. So I'm just loving this.
Yeah. I always set an intention for podcasts and this specific one. I'm like, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have fun and educate people. That's what we're gonna do. And by we I mean Natalia, of course, but I'm just squeezing the fun out of
It's a
her.
team effort.
What if you were born? So my mom is kind of obsessed with this one and
hmm
she's constantly trying to research this.
hmm
What if you were born during a retrograde, which my son was born during like three or four of them that passed
hmm
in August of
Yeah.
2022. So like, what does that mean?
It's actually quite typical because from my understanding, most of the outer planets, they retrograde every year.
Yeah.
So Mercury is closest to the sun. The sun represents our consciousness. So we are much more aware of Mercury retrograde because
Yeah.
again, closest planet, or I know Venus is closest to the sun, but Mercury is very, very close. So we are often very aware of that which is going on near the sun because of whatever. Our
Yeah.
that's the sun represents our basic consciousness. But here's the thing, planetary retrogrades are they're typical and common. So it's often that someone is going to have a retrograde in their chart. Now, in terms of like, let's just look at it more like esoterically. The way that I see a retrograde planet in the chart, like a natal retrograde, is two ways. First, I see it as something that is undone, that you are maybe that you left from another lifetime, or something that isn't extremely animated in your personality that you have to work a little harder to either bring to
Interesting.
fruition or to animate.
Yeah.
The idea of like the more esoteric perspective that a certain planetary placement can represent something that it's almost like Saturn can represent this in the chart. Like basically, Saturn, let me see if I can put this really straightforward, but the idea of Saturn is this is an area of your life or your soul's maturity that you haven't really aced yet. So wherever Saturn is placed, it has that quality of something that you from a multi-lifetime perspective, you haven't really figured out just yet. And retrograde planets, in my opinion, kind of take on the same kind of energy where it's not as robust or pronounced as a Saturn placement. But if you have a retrograde in the chart, it can be something that isn't as animated in your personality, that's a little more internal facing, and you have to work to bring it out. And or depending on what you're into, it can also be something that you just haven't really figured, that you kind of left undone from another incarnation, and it's important for you to explore it and
So cool.
work with it. Yeah. And look, I have Neptune in the 12th house. Like everything to me is like past lives. Like, I'm like, can we just, and that's really how I also view astrology, is really from that
Yeah. Yeah.
soul and like multi-lifetime perspective. I
I
just find it so fascinating.
I kid you not. I had a rapid resolution therapy session before this podcast, and I was working through a fear that I had that started when I first got pregnant. And it comes from like being hyper vigilant, protective, like, oh my
Yeah.
God, something bad's going to happen to my family. I got to protect, protect, protect. So, Dr. John Connolly, he cleared it for me, and it was hilarious because the most impactful clearings that I've had, he's had me go to past lives and realize that ultimately nothing bad actually happened, because it's not this lifetime in which it's like the end all be all. Like this lifetime is everything. It's actually like my shaman says, Don Javier, he says every lifetime is so tiny and short and just a little blip that you would be amazed by like all these things you make so important. And of course, it is at the same time so important that you enter a
Yeah.
lifetime, you live your purpose, you learn the lessons that you come here to learn, fix whatever happened in the past life, and not in like this scary karmic way. Cause I think people get stuck in like, oh my God, the reason why I'm experiencing debt or experiencing a broken marriage or a broken childhood or broken family is because of this bad thing that I did in the past life. I don't think it
Yes.
works that way. I don't
No,
see it that
no.
way. But like there are some elements where it's like maybe like exactly like how I held on to this fear coming from a past life, he made me realize like it really is not that big of a deal, and it's not your journey for this lifetime, but your soul kind of mixed up the old journey with the new journey. And oh my God, I'm telling you, whenever he takes me to a past life, it's like I know the transformation is going to be guaranteed. And like the way that I feel now versus this morning, that fear is completely gone. So I love that you
Wow.
address past lives, because anyone who has not gotten into past lives yet, I urge you to
So
somehow doing
powerful.
like a past life regression or just reading up on it, because it brings such an element of peace and understanding that I think that only focusing on like what's wrong with me in this lifetime, or I did something bad, or like there's something off, or whatever. There's like a fear, especially like fears that don't make any sense, typically are from past lives. Like if you can't connect it to
100%.
anything that happened, you want to go to the past life and working with some sort of expert. There's like a zillion modalities, and I never say like this is the ultimate way. But there, whatever modality works for you, if you can like go and sort that out in a past life, I'm telling you, the transformation is amazing.
I'll tell you
Um,
something so fast because I got to give a shout out to Leo Max. He is a like 25, I'm just kidding, but he has every planet in Scorpio. He's actually one of my healers. He's a hypnotherapist that I work with, a dear friend. And I did a session with him where, I mean, he does like deep, like Scorpio style, like freaking 4 hours hypnosis
Oh my
sessions,
God.
like not fucking around. And in this session, I won't go into the details, but it was insane what we uncovered and what was
Yeah.
knotted in my sacral. And at the end of that life, I was saying the women weren't protected. The women weren't protected. I kept saying it over and over. And I was like, I have to protect the women. It almost makes me
Yeah.
cry because it was almost like what I brought into this life, some things that happened when I was younger, and just keeping with that commitment of how can I help protect and heal women? Like, of
Yeah.
course, all beings, but I find that women are typically drawn to my work. And when he helped me see that, I was just like, I mean, it was profound,
Confirmation. Yeah.
profound. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was healing, very healing. I love past life, everything.
Yeah.
Many
Yeah.
Lives, Many Masters and Journey of Souls were the two books that
Mm.
really just got me like, just not even like it was teaching me anything new. It just helped me remember what I
For the
already
most
believed.
part, it's like nothing's
Yeah,
teaching us new. We're just
exactly. It's just like
remembering.
remembering. It's so
Like
beautiful.
manifestation, there's absolutely no part of me that is learning anything new. It's all remembering. It's all coming from just like even logically, like no information is new. It's
Yeah,
constantly being circulated and recycled and seen through new perspectives. That's what we can bring.
yeah,
Uniquely, we can bring in new perspectives, but everything is coming from some other source beyond anything you can imagine. So like having your ego in check when it comes to that, I think is equally as important as
100.
also owning that your own perspective is what makes your work so unique and so valuable to the world.
Mm.
Natalia, this has been an amazing conversation. Like
I'm so grateful.
I knew we'd had fun. I knew that like you would just give such incredible insight to astrology and all these amazing questions. For anyone who does not yet follow you or is into your work, can you kind of share like where people can find you and follow you, and enroll in all your goodies that you have available for people?
I mean, babe, I just want to say thank you. I had a moment. I have a Venus in Pisces, so I'm quite empathetic and sensitive, but is so sweet. I remembered one time I was in my bathtub at my old place in LA listening to your podcast. And I just remember being like, you know what? One day I'm going to meet Catherine, and one day maybe even I'll even get to be on her show. Like I just have like
Oh,
adored you and just really admired you for so long. So I just feel so honored that you gave me this opportunity. I feel like I
oh,
manifested it from a bathtub. So
that's amazing.
thank you, babe. Thank you so much. So basically, I'm very, very active on Instagram. It's just at Natalia_Benson. And then my website is just nataliabenson.com, and all the goods are on there. There's lots of fun stuff on the site.
And of course, we'll put that in the show notes. And this wasn't directly on your Instagram, it was on Gala's Instagram, but I'll never forget her posting, like speaking of Instagram and you being active. I know that you're so social and you love conversing with people, and that's like what I love
Yeah.
about you. But just to like take this to the edge, like Natalia was caught on video talking to the cement truck driver
In New
in
York.
LA or New
In
York
New
or wherever
York. Yeah.
traffic, and you're just straight up having an entire conversation. Like, guys, imagine like you're at a red light. Like most people don't just roll down the window, and especially like a cement truck driver, like, like the differences between the levels,
Oh
you
my
really have
God.
to like look up at him to have a whole blown conversation, but it's happening. And I died. I was like, this is
He
so
was
Natalia.
so awesome. I have so much Gemini, that's quality of just sociability. And he just had I love being in New York. I talk to everybody. New Yorkers, they're used to being around people all the time. They're just like, let's
They
chat.
are.
Like if you're
Yeah.
open. And so, yeah, the cement truck driver, I was like, do you have to go to school for that? Like, tell me more. He was amazing. Well, I didn't
Oh
even get
my
his
God.
name, but we had such a special, just two souls, just having a great moment. It was so amazing.
I just love you so much. Oh my God. Okay,
I
go
love you
follow
too.
Natalia. Go check out her
You
website. And with that being
guys.
said, thank you so much for being here,
Thank
sharing
you.
your wisdom, your energy, your grace, your presence. Just,
Okay.
it was so
This
much
is
fun.
amazing.
I knew it would be
Mwah.
fun. And with that being said, I will catch the rest of you in the next episode. Mwah. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you absolutely loved what you heard today, be sure to share it with me by leaving a review on iTunes so that I can keep the good stuff coming your way. If you aren't already following me on social media, come soak up the extra inspiration on Instagram by following @ManifestationBabe or visiting my website at manifestationbabe.com. I love and adore you so much and can't wait to connect with you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out there and manifest some magic.